So next one is really, how do you mitigate your own unconscious bias before you walk into an interview? We get thrown like 11 million pieces of information, minute by minute, and our brain processes just a tiny amount of those, right? So our brain has created all of these shortcuts in our head to just help us live and make decisions and function. And this one really came to mind because of my own bias, to be perfectly honest. Like, okay. So the beginning of my career, I was a Navy officer. One thing that is just ingrained in you in the military is to judge someone's capability and professionalism by how properly they wear their uniform, right? Like, you do a uniform inspection, right? Are you wearing it correctly? Are you meeting the regulation? Like, that is just ingrained in you from day one, right? And I know for myself that I will judge people based on their appearance, right? But I also know that how you appear is based on a million circumstances, right? Like your socioeconomic background, your health, what was going on today. Today it's raining outside. Like, if I didn't have an umbrella with me at that moment. And those have nothing to do with how capable someone is at their job, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. But it's a bias I know I have, right? So it's something that I tried to become very conscious of, because I certainly had some circumstances where I completely, early in my career, I completely discounted people because of how they showed up to an interview, right? And as I reflected back on that, it was like, oh, you're not living what you say you value, and how can we mitigate, right? That and that's just one example. It could be any number, of examples.
No, but that's like a big, because we actually talked, I think, a little bit about that before as well. I mean, it's a big deal, like, because I know what you're saying, like, in that bias, like, okay, well, that doesn't mean that they can't perform their job. And at the same time, though, like, how do you process that and work through it?
Yeah, so one thing that, and is the tool, the strategy you can use is writing a bias mitigation statement, right? And it's just like, how, right before I walk into this interview, how do I call my attention to that bias, right? You could write it, if you have a hard copy of their resume, you could write it across the top of the resume. If you have like an evaluation or a score sheet or something where you're taking notes, you could write it on there. So I could write something like, I'm gonna notice how this, candidate appears, but I am going to judge them on the value that they're going to add to my organization, not by their appearance. And it's just making me notice me noticing, right? As opposed to me just walking in there and you're busy and distracted, because I think the interview especially is just ripe for bias, right? It is a stranger meeting a stranger, and you have a very short period of time to make a very big decision, right? And you're going to make a million assumptions, right? And it's unavoidable, but how do you at least stop some of the ones that are damaging to people, right? Something that they can't control, their, how they walked in that day, the body that they were born into, fill in the blank. How do you at least kind of take those off the table? Because you're going to be making assumptions about their capability, their ability to join the team and become a thriving member of a team. So you have to make all of those assessments, and there's questioning around that. So how do you kind of neutralize those other assumptions that you're going to make, or again, call your attention to them, so you're not judging them harshly based solely on those, but more on their quality of their work. I remember one of my previous jobs, and we were interviewing a lot of people that day, and typically how we structured, there was 3 of us interviewing, we each did a different type of interviewing, and then we came together and kind of talked about the candidates. There was this one guy, he was a rock star, like he was amazing, and he also had like a bar piercing across the top of his ear. And one of the interviewers during the debrief was like, oh, what are people gonna think about that? And I'm like, what does that even matter?
Right.
The piercing in in his ear, like he was smart, he could do the job, and we felt like he would be a great add to the team, and ultimately we ended up hiring him.
Yeah.
But if that sole interviewer was the hiring manager and making a decision, maybe they wouldn't have hired that person.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had we were doing a shoot, and the crew member I had, he's an incredible videographer and has done like over the top, like incredible like music videos and like all this kinds of stuff, right? And so he's sort of in that realm, and we were in this super corporate-y like complex, and which was great because like he's gonna make, we used to have a slogan that said like, we make Bob from accounting cool, like
Right,
so
yeah.
like that was the goal, like that's what we're
one.
trying to do. And he's there, and I'm like, all right, well, you have to go into that boardroom and like just we need you to get like some amazing footage. And he got self-conscious because he had tats, like full sleeve tats and the whole nine. And I'm like, it's okay.
I sometimes liken this to the when you're flying on a plane, right? And you're there's the empty seat beside you, right? And you're looking at every like we all like, if you've ever been on a plane, like we've all done this, right? You're looking at every single person coming down the aisle, like, do I want to sit next to them? Do I want to sit next to them? And you like, I do this myself. We're making so many assumptions about that person,
Judgment
right?
Island, right?
With zero information other than like a few seconds of seeing them come down an airplane aisle.
It's terrible.
So yeah, right.
It's terrible.
but a real experience that most of us have. So.
For sure.